Imagine walking into the most prestigious restaurant in town, where a single table costs more than most people's weekly salary. You're tired, your clothes are wrinkled from travel, and all you want is a quiet meal. But the moment you sit down, the waitress looks at you like you don't belong. She rolls her eyes when you order water instead of champagne. She whispers to other staff, pointing at you. Little does she know, you hold the power to destroy this restaurant with a single word. You are Isabella Rousseau, the most feared Michelin inspector in Europe. And tonight, karma is about to be served. The autumn rain had been relentless that evening in the heart of Geneva's old quarter. Cobblestone streets glistened under the glow of antique street lamps, and the distant sound of church bells echoed through the narrow alleyways. Tucked between centuries-old buildings stood Le Palais d'Or, a restaurant that had been chasing its third Michelin star for over a decade. Its golden facade gleamed even in the downpour, and through the tall windows, crystal chandeliers cast warm light onto tables draped in ivory silk. Inside, the atmosphere was a carefully choreographed symphony of elegance. Soft piano music floated through the air, mingling with the gentle clink of champagne glasses and hushed conversations. The scent of truffle risotto and aged wine created an intoxicating aroma. Every detail had been perfected, from the hand-folded napkins to the single white orchid on each table. This was a temple of gastronomy, where the wealthy came to see and be seen. But for all its beauty, there was something cold beneath the surface. The staff moved with mechanical precision, their smiles reserved only for those who looked the part. Designer handbags and tailored suits were the unspoken dress code. If you didn't fit the image, you weren't truly welcome. At exactly 7:30 p.m., the restaurant's heavy oak door swung open, bringing with it a gust of cold wind and the sound of rain. A woman stepped inside, her silhouette backlit by the street lamps. She wore a simple black coat, slightly damp from the weather, and carried a worn leather messenger bag. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, a few strands escaping to frame her face. No jewelry adorned her neck or wrists. No designer logos announced her status. She looked like someone who had just gotten off a long train ride, which was exactly what she wanted. Isabella Rousseau paused at the entrance, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. The hostess stand with its leather-bound reservation book. The way the maitre d' greeted a couple in evening wear with excessive warmth. The dismissive glance a waiter gave to an older gentleman whose jacket looked outdated. She noted it all, filing each observation away in her mind. The hostess, a tall woman named Margot with severely pulled-back blonde hair and a practiced smile, approached with the confidence of someone who believed she could assess a person's worth in seconds. Her eyes traveled from Isabella's practical shoes to her unbranded coat, and something flickered across her face. Disappointment, perhaps. Or judgment. "Good evening," Isabella said in flawless French, her voice calm and pleasant. "I have a reservation under the name Rousseau." Margot's finger traced down the reservation book with agonizing slowness, as if hoping the name might disappear. "Rousseau," she repeated, her tone suggesting she found it hard to believe. "For one." "Yes, for one." A barely perceptible sigh escaped Margot's lips. Solo diners, especially those who didn't look wealthy, were seen as wasted opportunities. That table could have been occupied by a party of 4 ordering the tasting menu with wine pairings. But a reservation was a reservation. "Of course," Margot said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Right this way." As they walked through the dining room, Isabella noticed how Margot chose the path that took them past the most prominent tables, almost as if parading her. They passed a table where a businessman in a 3-piece suit was examining a wine list thicker than a novel. They passed another where a woman dripping in diamonds laughed at something her companion said. Each table received a warm nod from Margot. Isabella received nothing but the click of heels on marble. They stopped at a table tucked in the far corner, near the swinging doors to the kitchen. It was the kind of table restaurants reserved for walk-ins they hoped would eat quickly and leave. The lighting was harsh here, the ambience broken by the periodic crash of dishes from beyond the kitchen doors. "Will this be suitable?" Margot asked, though her tone suggested she wasn't particularly concerned with the answer. Isabella glanced at the table, then at the prime spots near the windows where empty tables sat waiting for important guests. She smiled slightly. This will be perfect. Margot seemed almost disappointed that Isabella hadn't complained. She placed a menu on the table with a soft thud. Your server will be with you shortly. Then she turned on her heel and glided away, her attention already shifting to a couple who had just entered wearing clothes that screamed money. Isabella settled into her chair, removed her coat, and placed her worn messenger bag on the empty seat beside her. She opened the menu, noting the prices that would make most people's eyes water. 45 euros for an appetizer. 120 euros for the signature beef dish. The wine list started at 70 euros for a glass. But Isabella wasn't here to judge the prices. She was here to judge everything else. A young waitress named Celine approached the table, her expression a mixture of fatigue and barely concealed disdain. She was in her mid-twenties, pretty in a severe way, with dark hair pulled back so tightly it gave her face a stretched appearance. Her uniform was impeccable, but her attitude needed work. Have you decided? Celine asked, not bothering with pleasantries or introducing herself. Her eyes kept darting back toward the main dining room, as if she resented having to serve this corner table. I'd like to start with a glass of water, please, Isabella said pleasantly. Still, no ice. Celine's pen paused over her notepad. Just water. To start, yes. The waitress's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. We have an extensive wine list. Perhaps you'd like to hear about our sommelier's selections. Water will be fine for now, thank you. Celine wrote something on her pad with more force than necessary. And for your meal? Isabella hadn't been given time to properly read the menu, but she'd memorized it within seconds of opening it, a skill honed over years of inspection work. I'll have the autumn vegetable tart to start, followed by the duck breast with cherry reduction. The duck is 110 euros, Celine said, her tone implying that perhaps Isabella should reconsider. I'm aware, thank you. Celine's jaw tightened. She collected the menu and walked away without another word. As she passed the waiter station, Isabella noticed her lean in to whisper something to a colleague. They both glanced back at Isabella's table, and the other waiter smirked. Isabella took a small notebook from her bag, the kind that could be mistaken for a journal, and began to write. The lighting at this table, she noted, was at least 30% dimmer than the rest of the room. The orchid in the centerpiece was wilting, its petals brown at the edges. The silverware, while polished, had been placed slightly crooked. Small details that most diners might not notice, but Isabella noticed everything. Celine returned with a small glass of water, placing it on the table with enough force that some sloshed over the rim. She didn't apologize, didn't offer to wipe it up. She simply turned and walked away. Isabella took a sip. The water was lukewarm and had a slight metallic taste, suggesting it had come straight from the tap rather than being filtered or bottled. She made another note. Around her, the restaurant continued its evening performance. At a nearby table, a waiter was uncorking a bottle of wine with theatrical precision, letting the couple smell the cork before pouring a taste for approval. At another, a server was describing the night's special in loving detail, his hands gesturing as if conducting an orchestra. But no one came to check on Isabella. No one refilled her water. She sat in her corner, invisible despite being in plain sight. After 20 minutes, her appetizer arrived. Celine placed the plate down without ceremony, without the usual flourish of describing the dish. Isabella studied the autumn vegetable tart. The presentation was beautiful, swirls of roasted vegetables arranged in a perfect spiral, a drizzle of balsamic reduction creating artistic patterns on the white plate. She took a bite. The flavors were exquisite. The vegetables were perfectly roasted, their natural sweetness enhanced by herbs and a touch of honey. The pastry was buttery and flaky, dissolving on her tongue. This was the work of a truly talented chef, someone who understood not just technique but heart. But technical excellence wasn't enough for a Michelin star. The entire experience mattered. And right now, the experience was disappointing. Isabella ate slowly, savoring each bite while observing the room. She watched as Margot seated a group of businessmen at one of the prime window tables, even though they had no reservation. She watched as Celine transformed into a different person when serving a couple who had ordered champagne and the most expensive items on the menu, her smile bright, her attention lavish. When Celine finally returned to clear Isabella's appetizer plate, she didn't ask how the meal had been. She simply took the plate and left. The main course took another 20 minutes to arrive. By now, Isabella had been sitting for nearly an hour, and her water glass had been empty for 30 minutes. At any other table, it would have been refilled 3 times by now. When Celine brought the duck, she placed it down with the same indifference. This time, Isabella decided to speak up. "Excuse me," she said pleasantly. "Could I trouble you for more water?" Celine's eyes narrowed slightly. "Of course." But she didn't move. She stood there for a moment, as if waiting for Isabella to add something to the order, perhaps finally ordering wine or champagne to make this table worth her time. "Thank you," Isabella said simply. Celine walked away, and Isabella noticed her stop at the waiter station instead of going directly to get the water. She began talking to the same colleague from earlier, and they both looked toward Isabella's table. The colleague shook his head, and they laughed about something. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. No water came. Isabella cut into her duck. The meat was perfectly cooked, medium rare with a crispy skin that crackled under her knife. The cherry reduction was a masterpiece of sweet and savory, balanced with what tasted like a hint of cognac. Every bite confirmed what she had suspected, the chef here was extraordinary. But the service was destroying the experience. A loud laugh drew her attention. At a central table, a group of well-dressed women were being served dessert with what could only be described as theatrical joy. The waiter was describing each element of the dish as if it were a precious gem. One of the women took a photo with her phone, and the waiter offered to take a picture of the whole group. Everyone was smiling. Isabella looked down at her own plate, still waiting for water in the corner where she had been hidden away. She took out her phone and discreetly photographed her dish, not for social media, but for her report. Then she opened her notes app and began typing. Everything was documented, the timing, the service, the temperatures, the flavors, the attitudes. When she finished her duck, she set down her silverware in the traditional position that indicated she was done. In a proper fine dining establishment, this would signal the staff to clear the plate within minutes. Isabella waited. And waited. 15 minutes passed before Celine returned, and when she did, she seemed almost annoyed to find the plate empty. "Dessert?" she asked without enthusiasm. "Yes, I'll have the chocolate soufflé, please." Celine's eyebrow arched. "That's an additional €35, and it takes 25 minutes to prepare." "Are you sure?" The implication was clear: you've already spent enough, and we don't want you taking up this table any longer than necessary. Isabella smiled. "I have time." "Fine." Celine collected the plate and disappeared into the kitchen. While waiting, Isabella excused herself to use the restroom. She walked through the dining room, noting how other staff members stepped aside for well-dressed guests but didn't extend the same courtesy to her. In the restroom, which was as opulent as the rest of the restaurant with marble counters and gold fixtures, she overheard 2 women talking. "Did you see that woman in the corner? She's been nursing 1 glass of water all night." "I know. Celine is so annoyed. She says the woman is clearly out of her depth and should have gone to a bistro instead." They laughed, and Isabella remained silent in her stall, listening. "I don't understand why people like that even try to come to places like this. It's embarrassing." "Absolutely. Some people just don't belong in high society." The women left, their laughter echoing off the marble. Isabella washed her hands slowly, looking at her reflection in the mirror. She had deliberately dressed down for this inspection, wanting to see how the restaurant treated those who didn't fit their preferred demographic. Now she had her answer. When she returned to her table, she found her soufflé waiting. It had clearly been sitting for several minutes, its perfect rise already beginning to collapse. Céline was nowhere to be seen. Isabella tasted it anyway. Even slightly deflated, it was magnificent, rich, airy, with a molten chocolate center that spoke of precise timing and skill. The chef clearly deserved recognition. But the front-of-house staff was sabotaging everything the kitchen worked so hard to create. She ate in silence, watching the restaurant begin to empty as the evening grew late. Couples lingered over coffee. Waiters chatted near the bar. Margot bid farewell to departing guests with warm smiles and wishes for a pleasant evening. But no one checked on Isabella. When she finally finished, she had to flag down a passing waiter to request her bill. He looked startled, as if he'd forgotten she existed, and hurried away to get it. Céline brought the check, placing it on the table without a word. The total came to €240. Isabella pulled out a credit card, not the premium black card she actually owned, but a standard one, and placed it in the folder. Céline's eyes flickered to the card, and something like vindication crossed her face. She took it away to process the payment. When she returned with the receipt, Isabella added a 10% tip, standard for adequate service but far below the usual 15 to 20% for exceptional service. She signed the receipt, closed the folder, and stood to gather her things. As she put on her coat, Céline appeared one last time. "Have a good evening," she said with mechanical politeness, already looking past Isabella toward another table. "Before I go," Isabella said quietly, causing Céline to focus on her for the first time all evening. "Could you please tell me the name of your head chef?" Céline looked surprised by the question. "Chef Laurent Beaumont." "Why?" "I'd like to compliment his work. The food was exceptional." For a brief moment, Céline's expression softened. "Oh. Well, thank you. I'll let him know." "Please do," Isabella said. Then she added, "Though I have to say, it's unfortunate that such extraordinary culinary talent is undermined by the service." Céline's face hardened. "I'm sorry you feel that way." "I'm sure you are," Isabella said gently. Then she smiled, picked up her bag, and walked toward the exit. As she passed through the dining room, she heard Margot speaking to a couple near the hostess stand. "We pride ourselves on treating every guest like royalty," Margot was saying. "At Le Palais d'Or, everyone matters." Isabella nearly laughed at the irony but kept walking. She pushed through the heavy oak door and stepped out into the cool night air. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets washed clean and glistening. She walked a short distance to her hotel, already composing her report in her mind. What the staff of Le Palais d'Or didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that Isabella Rousseau wasn't just any diner. She was the chief inspector for Michelin Guide Europe, responsible for awarding and revoking the prestigious stars that could make or break a restaurant's reputation. She had been evaluating Le Palais d'Or for its potential third star, the ultimate achievement in fine dining. The chef, Laurent Beaumont, had spent 15 years perfecting his craft, and his food was undeniably worthy. But Michelin stars weren't awarded solely for food. They represented the entire dining experience, ambience, service, attention to detail, and the way every guest was treated regardless of their appearance or perceived wealth. Tonight, Le Palais d'Or had failed spectacularly. Back in her hotel room, Isabella opened her laptop and began writing her detailed report. She documented everything: the dismissive hostess, the corner table, the judgmental waitress, the forgotten water, the deflated soufflé left to sit. She also praised the food, giving Chef Beaumont the recognition he deserved while noting that his talent was being wasted by a front-of-house team that valued appearances over excellence. Her recommendation was clear: Le Palais d'Or would not receive its third star. In fact, she would be recommending a review of their existing 2 stars, as the service no longer met Michelin standards of treating all guests with respect and dignity. She hit send on the report and closed her laptop. Tomorrow, She would move on to the next city, the next restaurant, the next evaluation. But tonight's experience would stay with her. It always did when she witnessed such blatant discrimination. What Isabella didn't know yet was that her report would set off a chain of events that would transform Le Palais d'Or forever. 3 weeks later, Chef Laurent Beaumont stood in his kitchen, preparing for the evening service. It was late October, and the Michelin Guide announcement was scheduled for the next day. He had been told by sources that inspectors had visited, though no one could confirm when or who. Laurent had cooked every dish with perfection for months, hoping that this would finally be the year. His sous chef, Marie, was arranging plates when the restaurant manager, Philippe, burst through the kitchen doors with a strange expression on his face. "Laurent, you need to come to the dining room. Now." Laurent frowned. "We're in the middle of prep." "Now," Philippe insisted. "There's someone here to see you." Confused, Laurent removed his apron and followed Philippe through the swinging doors. The dining room was empty except for one woman sitting at a corner table, the same corner table where unimportant guests were usually hidden. She wore a simple but elegant navy suit, and her dark hair was styled professionally. Something about her seemed familiar. "Chef Beaumont," the woman said, standing to greet him. "My name is Isabella Rousseau. I'm the chief inspector for Michelin Guide Europe." Laurent's heart stopped. This was the woman he'd heard rumors about, the inspector whose judgment could end careers or elevate restaurants to legendary status. But why was she here in person? Inspectors never revealed themselves unless something had gone terribly wrong. "I had dinner here 3 weeks ago," Isabella continued. "I was seated at this very table." Laurent looked at the corner table, confusion washing over him. Why would they have seated a Michelin inspector there? "I want to show you something," Isabella said. She took out her phone and pulled up photos from that night. "This was my experience." As she scrolled through images and described the evening, Laurent's expression shifted from confusion to horror. The dismissive hostess. The judgmental waitress. The corner table. The forgotten water. Every detail painted a picture of discrimination and poor service. "But your food," Isabella said, her tone softening, "was absolutely exceptional. The vegetable tart, the duck, the soufflé, every bite was a masterpiece. You have extraordinary talent, Chef Beaumont." Laurent didn't know what to say. Pride and shame warred within him. However, Isabella continued, "A Michelin star represents more than just food. It represents an entire experience. And I cannot, in good conscience, award a 3rd star to an establishment that treats guests differently based on their appearance." Laurent felt his dreams crumbling. "Madam, I had no idea. I'm in the kitchen. I don't see what happens in the dining room." "I know," Isabella said. "Which is why I'm here today. Tomorrow, the Michelin Guide will announce that Le Palais d'Or is under review. You will retain your 2 stars for now, but they are conditional. You have 6 months to transform your service culture, or you will lose them entirely." The blood drained from Laurent's face. Losing stars was worse than never earning them. It was a public humiliation, a mark of failure. "But," Isabella said, her voice taking on a different tone, "I'm also here to offer you something. If you can prove that you've created a culture of genuine hospitality, where every guest, regardless of their appearance or wallet size, is treated with respect, I will return for another evaluation. And if you succeed, I will personally recommend you not just for your 3rd star, but for recognition as one of Europe's finest dining experiences." Laurent stared at her. "You would give me another chance?" "I believe in redemption, Chef Beaumont. Your food tells me you understand beauty and care. Now show me you can extend that philosophy beyond the kitchen." At that moment, Margot and Céline entered the dining room, preparing for the evening service. They stopped short when they saw Isabella. "This is the woman I told you about," Laurent said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "The Michelin inspector." Céline's face went white. Margot looked like she might faint. You. Celine whispered. You were here that night. In the corner. I thought you were just. Just what? Isabella asked calmly. Just someone who didn't deserve proper service because I didn't look wealthy enough. Silence filled the room. Tomorrow, the industry will know that Le Palais d'Or is under review, Laurent said, turning to face his staff. Our reputation, which I've spent 15 years building, is now at risk because of how you treated this woman. Because of how you've been treating anyone who doesn't fit your narrow definition of worthy. Margot found her voice. Chef, we were only trying to maximize revenue. You were only trying to judge people by their appearance. Laurent's voice rose, his French accent thickening with emotion. Every person who walks through that door deserves our best. Every person. Do you understand what you've done? Celine had tears in her eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't know. You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them well, Isabella said. That's the entire point. She turned back to Laurent. I'll return in 6 months. Use this time wisely, Chef Beaumont. Show me that Le Palais d'Or is worthy of the excellence you create in your kitchen. With that, Isabella collected her bag and walked toward the exit. As she reached the door, she paused and looked back. By the way, Margot, I heard what you tell guests, that you treat everyone like royalty. I hope 6 months from now, that will actually be true. The door closed behind her, leaving the staff standing in stunned silence. The next day, the announcement hit the industry like an earthquake. Le Palais d'Or, a 2-star restaurant on the verge of earning its third, was now under official review for service failures. The news spread through Geneva's restaurant community within hours. Reporters called for comments. Food bloggers speculated about what had happened. Reservations began to cancel. Laurent gathered his entire staff for an emergency meeting. He didn't mince words. From this moment forward, everything changes, he said. I don't care if someone walks in wearing a tuxedo or a tracksuit. I don't care if they order champagne or water. Every guest will be treated with the same level of respect and attention. Is that clear? Heads nodded around the room. Margot, I want you to develop a new seating system. No more good tables and bad tables. Every table in this restaurant is a good table, and every guest deserves the best seat available. Margot nodded, shame coloring her cheeks. Celine, Laurent continued, his voice softening slightly. I know you're a hard worker. But I need you to understand something. Our job isn't just to serve food. It's to create an experience that makes people feel valued. Can you do that? Celine wiped her eyes. Yes, chef. I promise. Good. Because I'm going to give you a chance to prove it. But one more incident of discrimination, from anyone on this staff, and you're gone. All of you. The message was clear. Change or leave. Over the next 6 months, Le Palais d'Or underwent a transformation. Laurent implemented new training programs focused on hospitality and empathy. He brought in consultants to help the staff examine their biases. He changed the seating chart so that every table had equal visibility and service priority. He even started personally greeting guests in the dining room, something he'd rarely done before. Margot learned to welcome every person who walked through the door with genuine warmth, regardless of their appearance. Celine, given a second chance, became one of the most attentive servers on the staff, going out of her way to ensure every guest felt valued. The word began to spread. Le Palais d'Or was different now. Authentic. Welcoming. The food had always been extraordinary, but now the entire experience matched that excellence. Reservations began to return. Food critics wrote about the restaurant's remarkable cultural shift. A journalist even wrote a feature titled, How a Michelin Inspector's Tough Love Saved a Restaurant's Soul. 6 months to the day after Isabella's first visit, Laurent stood in his kitchen, preparing for evening service with a mixture of hope and anxiety. He had done everything she asked. More than she asked. But would it be enough? At 7:30 p.m., the reservation system showed a booking under the name Rousseau. Laurent's heart raced. He told his staff nothing, wanting to see how they would naturally respond. He watched through the kitchen window as a woman entered the restaurant. Isabella walked through the door, once again dressed simply, this time in jeans and a casual sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. The ultimate test. Margot's face showed a flicker of recognition, but her smile never wavered. Good evening and welcome to Le Palais d'Or. Do you have a reservation? Yes, under Rousseau. Wonderful. Margot's warmth seemed genuine. Right this way. We have a beautiful table by the window for you this evening. She led Isabella not to a corner, but to one of the prime spots overlooking the street. The table was perfectly set, the lighting warm and inviting. Your server will be with you shortly. In the meantime, may I offer you a glass of champagne to start your evening? It's complimentary for all our guests tonight. Isabella smiled. Thank you. That would be lovely. Céline appeared moments later, and Isabella saw the exact second when recognition hit. But Céline didn't panic. She smiled genuinely. Good evening. My name is Céline, and I'll be taking care of you this evening. Can I start you with still or sparkling water? Still, please. No ice. Of course. Céline's attention was focused entirely on Isabella, with no hint of judgment or dismissiveness. I'll bring that right away, along with tonight's menu. We have a spectacular autumn tasting menu if you're interested, or you're welcome to order à la carte. For the next 2 hours, Isabella experienced what Le Palais d'Or had become. The service was impeccable, attentive without being hovering, knowledgeable without being pretentious. Her water was refilled before she had to ask. Céline described each dish with genuine enthusiasm. The sommelier spent time helping her choose a wine without once suggesting she should order the most expensive option. And the food? Still magnificent. Laurent's passion shone through every carefully crafted dish. When dessert was finished, Céline approached with a warm smile. Chef Beaumont was hoping you might have a moment to visit the kitchen, if you're interested. Isabella nodded. I would be honored. She followed Céline through the dining room, a path that took her past engaged, happy diners of all types, and through the kitchen doors. Laurent stood waiting, his chef's whites pristine, his eyes hopeful but anxious. Chef Beaumont, Isabella said. That was an extraordinary meal. But more importantly, it was an extraordinary experience. Laurent let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. 6 months ago, I sat in that corner and experienced discrimination, Isabella continued. Tonight, I sat by the window and experienced genuine hospitality. Your food was always worthy of recognition. Now, your entire restaurant is. She pulled out her phone and showed him a document. I submitted my report this afternoon. Le Palais d'Or will retain its 2 stars, and I am recommending you for your 3rd star in next year's guide. You've earned it, chef. Not just through your cooking, but through your willingness to change and grow. Laurent's eyes filled with tears. His staff, who had gathered around, broke into applause. But, Isabella said, and everyone quieted, the real test isn't impressing an inspector. It's maintaining this standard every single day, for every single guest. Can you promise me that? Laurent nodded firmly. You have my word. We've learned what truly matters. Isabella smiled and extended her hand. Then I look forward to dining here again. As a regular guest this time, not an inspector. They shook hands, and as Isabella left the kitchen, she heard the staff celebrating behind her. She walked through the dining room one last time, past tables full of happy guests, past Margot welcoming newcomers with genuine warmth, past the window table where she had spent the evening. As she stepped out into the cool Geneva night, she felt a sense of satisfaction. This was why she did what she did, not to punish, but to elevate. Not to destroy, but to transform. Le Palais d'Or had learned a valuable lesson: true excellence isn't just about what's on the plate. It's about how you treat people. And that lesson was worth far more than any star. The following year, when the new Michelin Guide was announced, Le Palais d'Or received its third star. Chef Laurent Beaumont stood on stage accepting the recognition, but in his speech, he didn't just thank his culinary team. He thanked the woman who had shown him that greatness required more than skill, it required humanity. A year ago, someone walked into my restaurant and was treated poorly because of how she looked, Laurent said to the assembled crowd of chefs and journalists. That person was Isabella Rousseau, and she could have destroyed us. Instead, she gave us a chance to become better. This star belongs to her as much as to anyone in my kitchen, because she reminded us that every person who walks through our door deserves respect, dignity, and excellence. That is the true meaning of hospitality. In the audience, Isabella smiled quietly. She had attended the ceremony not as the stern inspector, but as a guest celebrating the industry she loved. As for Margot and Celine, they learned lessons they would carry for the rest of their careers. Margot went on to open her own restaurant, built on principles of inclusivity and genuine welcome. Celine became a manager at another establishment, where she trained new servers to never judge guests by appearance. The story of Le Palais d'Or spread throughout the restaurant industry, a cautionary tale and an inspiration. It reminded everyone that in the pursuit of excellence, the how matters as much as the what. And Isabella? She continued her work, traveling from city to city, restaurant to restaurant, always dressed simply, always watching. She was the guardian of standards, yes, but also a believer in second chances. Her job wasn't to wield power like a weapon, but to use it to elevate the entire industry. Because at the end of the day, whether you're serving a billionaire or someone ordering water, everyone deserves to feel like they matter. That's not just good business. It's basic human decency. And sometimes, the most powerful people in the room are the ones you least expect. The rain had returned to Geneva on the night of the Michelin ceremony, but inside the Grand Hall, everything was warm and bright. As guests celebrated their achievements, Isabella slipped out early, pulling her simple coat around her shoulders. She had 3 more cities to visit this month, 3 more restaurants to evaluate. Tomorrow, she would be just another face in the crowd, another guest that staff might dismiss or judge. And she would be watching, always watching, ready to reward true excellence and correct those who forgot that hospitality means welcoming everyone. Because that's what Michelin stars truly represent, not just exceptional food, but exceptional humanity. And Isabella Rousseau would make sure that standard was upheld, one meal at a time.